Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about what would be the biggest threat during a global disaster. Okay, and this is kind of specific to the part of the United States that I live in. Basically the northern part. Okay, it doesn't. I happen to be in the northeast, but it could be northwest or north middle of the United States. The same issue presents itself. Basically, through the winter, the temperatures drop to very cold levels, well below freezing. Okay, and a lot of people, they forget that their heating systems don't work without electricity. Okay, now in a prolonged global disaster, again, and when I say global disaster, it could be anything from natural to man-made. Okay, man-made would be, let's say, something like a war, right, that broke out, to natural, a huge earthquake, volcanoes, asteroids, that sort of stuff. So it doesn't matter what the cause of it is. What we're talking about here is a prolonged global disaster that affects something more than just a small region. Like, for example, Hurricane Katrina. I mean, yes, that was a disaster, but it pretty much affected a very small area of the country, and other parts of the country, were relatively quickly were able to come in and assist. Okay, in a global disaster, basically there is no assistance. Everybody's suffering the same way. All parts of the country are trying to survive. Okay, so there's no help going from one area to another area. You're pretty much stuck where you are with what you have. Okay, and the summer months, okay, in the Northeast are somewhat survivable. Um, uh, you know, because basically, you can, if you're short of something, I mean, even if you don't have gas, I mean, hey, you can get out and you can walk for miles, you can walk days if you have to, to get to a food source. So in the summertime, a lot of these things are survivable, but in the wintertime, okay, especially when temperatures fall below freezing, okay, sometimes, well into the, below the teens, sometimes into the negative numbers, it's a whole different ball game, okay. In a global disaster, the electricity is going to be knocked out. Okay, whether it's immediately or whether it's over a period of time, the electricity is going to get knocked out, and most people's heating systems will not work without electricity. Even if they have wells, their wells are not going to work without electricity. If you have a septic system, your septic system is probably not going to work out without electricity. So you're going to run into some serious problems, okay, really fast. And most homes today don't have chimneys, okay? And what a lot of people are going to probably do is they're going to try to make some type of a makeshift chimney within their house, and they're going to end up burning their house down. So now they got absolutely no place to shelter themselves, okay? So this is the biggest threat that people in the Northeast would encounter. Now you might say, hey, how did people do it, 200 years ago? Well, basically, society, 200 years ago or even 100 years ago, the houses, the way people lived was designed around that aspect of not having electricity run everything, okay? Today, we're so dependent on electricity that not even the farmers, okay, can grow food without electricity and without fuel, okay? And I'll give you an example. I spoke to people, they're probably long gone by now, but many years ago, I spoke to people that actually survived through World War II, okay, in Europe, okay, and I asked them, okay, how did the war affect your life, okay, and they said absolutely not at all, okay. The war had absolutely no effect on them, even though at various points they had German troops coming through, they had American troops coming through at a different point. The war did not affect them because there was no actual fighting in the town that they were in. Okay, and a few people have told me this at different locations in Europe, and that was the case. I mean, there was a presence of troops, but because there was no fighting, unless there was looting or something going on, and in this particular case there wasn't. The war did not affect them. Okay. Now that would be completely different today, because what would happen is back then, okay, during World War II, these local villages, right, and these were villages that I was talking to, these villages were not dependent on fuel from coming from one part of the country, from a different part of the country to them, so that they could power their machinery. These people basically, they grew their food with animal labor, okay, and basically they got their water out of the ground with hand pumps, or they took it from the stream that was running by, okay. So they were not dependent on any advanced machinery to live on, okay. So for that reason, even though there was a world war going on, as long as there was no fighting in their actual town, they were completely unaffected, okay. Today, that's completely different. If you're a farmer that grows his own food, I mean, you are not self-sufficient, okay, because you are dependent on both fuel and machine parts coming from a different part of the country, okay, and on other people's expertise, okay. It's very likely that you are not an expert on fixing your tractor if it breaks. I mean, you might be able to change a couple of parts, but it's unlikely that you can take the whole engine apart and put it back together, if you need to. Okay, so everybody is dependent on everybody today, and the people that we're dependent on, and the skills and the resources that we're dependent on, is not localized. It's far away, and the way those things come to us, all right, is through our transportation system, okay? Cars, trucks, trains, airplanes. So if there's a global disaster and that system breaks down, all these, basically the system's going to stop. And once the system stops, it's really easy. It's really hard to get it started up again. But anyway, the point of this video is that, before you starve to death, or before you even die of dehydration, you are most likely to freeze to death if you live in the in the northeastern part of the United States. Now you might say, hey, I'm just going to go out and chop a tree down, and the fact that you would say that means that you don't know anything about survival, because you can't just chop a tree down, cut it up, and throw a match on and expect that tree is going to actually catch fire. Okay, basically, firewood requires preparation. Okay, you gotta chop the tree down in the summertime. You gotta let it dry out. Okay, then you gotta cover it so that it stays dry. Okay, and only then is that tree useful. Can it really be used as firewood? Okay, because basically, if I were to cut down any one of these trees right now, they're frozen solid. Okay, it would take a lot of heat. All right, would have to put a torch on it for a very long time, in order to get that wood to. First, I gotta bring the temperature of the wood down. Then I gotta dry it out, and only then will a piece of that wood actually ignite. Okay, and at that point, it's a very slow burn. The way that works is that a small section of that tree starts burning, okay, and it's a low flame. It's a relatively low fire, and then that fire, little by little, it kind of expands and it starts warming up other parts of the wood, and then you slowly build a fire like that. And a lot of times it's just going to blow out on you, okay. And I mean, you'll put oil on it, you'll put all sorts of flammable things on it, and the tree will not burn because it is frozen all the way through, okay, and it is also, it's a live tree, so it's damp all the way through. So it's not as easy as some of you guys may think, okay. So that's something for you guys to be aware of, okay. That be aware that if you live in the northern part of the United States, the biggest threat to your survival is going to be the cold, okay. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.